If it wasn't for goats, we wouldn't have coffee. Look it up.
I want to get some coffee. You want some coffee?
No, thank you. I'm fine.
And the best sports talk in Acadiana. 103.3 The Goat.
Welcome back into 103.3 The Goat, simulcast on 1420 The Goat, the greatest sports talk of all time. I'm Scott Prather on The Great Scott Show. And as promised, joining me now, friend of the program, friend to all. He's been in the game a long time. College pro analyst, co-host of Sports Talk over on WWL. You remember him from back in the day with the great Buddy D and all over the place. MikeDetillier.com. Great place to get insight. His draft guide every year is like a draft Bible for many of us. Mike Detillier joins us this morning on the program. Good morning, Mike. Man, how's life? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
You know, I was watching the Pelicans last night and, you know, seeing the crowd at the Smoothie King Center get into it. And, you know, I've watched all the games this year, often on delay because I could fast forward and have kids. Got to wait till they get to bed. But I was, you know, having been, you know, at the Monday night game against Baltimore for the Saints and having been in the Smoothie King Center, there have been little pockets of time where, you know, the fans in the Gulf South, you know, get into the Pelicans a little bit more than the Saints, but it's usually fleeting. It doesn't really happen for very long. You know, is there, I know it's, quote, Saints country, and it always will be. I get all of that. But, Mike, are we at a realistic point in time where just because, you know what, you love winning, you hate losing, and, you know, you love bright futures, other futures look bleak. Is there a little more of a stronger pulse right now from fans of the Pelicans than the Saints? And I know for a lot of fans, they're fans of both, right? It's not an either-or thing, but just feels like one's trending in the right direction and the other's trending in the complete opposite.
I think there's certainly a lot more interest today. Now, I couldn't have told you that a year ago. It goes to show how quickly things change. Pelicans, tremendous interest in them. And we're talking about we in November.
Right.
Okay? And normally you don't get a lot of talk about NBA basketball in late October and November and December. It's normally after the Saints are over with. But because of how the season's going, I think there is certainly that twist to it this year. Because there is a certain reality to the Saints. You can be the biggest fan in the world of the Saints, and we were laughing about this the other day, Bobby. He was like, you did a lot more second-guess shows in losing seasons than winning until I got here. I said, you know, what the hell happened this year? And he was like, I don't know. But he's right about that. But you can see it and kind of feel it in the vibe of people, a lot more interest early in the NBA and in the Pelicans than any time I can remember, to be honest with you. And it hasn't trended toward Pelicans or even the Hornets until after the years started again.
That's just right.
This year you're getting it a lot earlier. So I think they can see it. You can see that Pelicans team is loaded, got a lot of young talent, got some veterans that kind of stabilize everything, but that they're headed in the right direction. And, you know, you got a superstar player when he's healthy, and that's Zion, and he puts them butts in the seats. People come to see him play. And, you know, with Ingram and Alvarado, and I think when we're going to write that story, that trade for C.J. McCollum sort of changed the world for them. Just one quick swoop of a trade, and it sort of changed a lot of attitudes and and the way you think about the Pelicans today.
And Mike, I think the thing that I've covered the franchise in the 20 years they've been in New Orleans. The thing that's never quite connected outside of your hardcore fan base, which has always been there, but just making it a lot bigger and, like you said, having it sort of slap in November as opposed to, are they good? Are they in the playoff hunt after All-Star break? Now a lot of people kind of start paying attention. The thing that's been missing until now has been that organic connection with the fan base, right? Like, it wasn't there in years past, even when they were good. It was fleeting. I mean, like I said, hardcore fans get mad at me for saying it, but it's true. Like, maybe you and I are into it, but a lot of people, it's kind of like, oh, that's cool. Now, when is the draft, right? Now, I think with that run last year without Zion, but how they've been able to sort of connect with the community, with the Gulf South, not just New Orleans, but outside of it, and buy in a way that feels real and not put on, as opposed to in the past, it's kind of like this ticking clock. Man, the superstar's going to want to leave. What do we do? It almost feels like this race against the inevitable, whereas this feels totally different. And you've covered the Saints, longer than anyone that I know, as long as anybody, and there's always been your hardcore Saints fans, but man, whenever Katrina happened and you came around in 2006, there was this organic connection that really just could not be unbroken, and it changed things. And I'm not comparing this season to the 2006 Saints as far as the Pelicans go. I'm not. I'm just saying, once you finally are able to form that connection, and there's no way to just force it, you just kind of know it when you see it. It really is, to me, when you can kind of just start to feel it and you start to see the difference and you start to see, shoot, man, I'm here in Lafayette, and before the Pelican season opened last month, I was getting lots of emails and interest in people, and I'm like, where? I know I follow them, but where is this coming from? And I really think it's that you have the organic connection with a fan base and you win, and I think that equals the ultimate sort of, interest in a team at a local level.
Yeah, and you've built up, now you've got a little bit of time that you've been here with a fan base, and you start to see it's almost like building a house, okay? You see they built kind of the structure early, and they poured the concrete, and you see everything, from day one, and then now you near completion, and you say, man, that really looks good. But it sort of sometimes take a while, and then all of a sudden, pow. And I do think right coach, right mix of veterans, and you certainly have some great talent with an Ingram, with Brandon Ingram and Zion and McCollum, but it's people that maybe the blue-collar guy really kind of connects to, with an Alvarado. And then last night you saw Trey Murphy get hot, with the threes. And so every night's a little bit different, maybe a little bit different person that makes that move. And that's when you know you got a really good team. Well, when it's different people every night. It's not the same individuals, but it's playing as one, and they get you excited about how they play. And I used to tease Jen Hale about this because she would always ask me, how do you think the broadcast went? And I said, well, I would watch the first quarter and the fourth. I didn't see a lot of the second and the third because NBA basketball you can get a 14-point lead, and then all of a sudden you leading by 10 the other side. So I think what you see here is not the start, because I think the start was last year. But what you're seeing here is a fast progression to the top of a franchise that everything connected. And right coach, players, everything's right. And it's just to see how far it's going to take you. Because I do believe in the NBA, you got to walk down that basketball aisle, okay? You got to do it. It's these kind of bang one-hit wonders, that may happen in the NFL every once in a while. It happens every once in a while in Major League Baseball. But for the most part, in sports, at that level, you got to walk it before you win it. And I think for most people, the interest early is, wow, this is a team that could potentially walk it and walk far down that aisle, basketball aisle. And so, it's interesting how a year ago I would have never said that. I wouldn't have, because, you wondered if Zion wanted to be here. Now he has signed a long-term extension. You wondered a little bit about what was happening behind the scenes. They get off to such a bad start a year ago, and you couldn't give away tickets. And I told this story. I got given courtside tickets and everything, and I didn't really feel like going to the game. I was going to watch it on television. And so I leave the studio that day, and I pull out, and there's a gentleman who's parking cars at a restaurant. And I recognize him. I used to see him before Saints games. And so I rolled down my window. I said, hey, you want 2 tickets to the Pelicans game? And he said, how much? I said, no. I said, if you want them, I'll give them to you. He said, where I got to sit? I said, courtside. He's like, you kidding? I said, no. I said, no, I got a couple of tickets. I'll give it to you if you want. And he's like, man, I'll knock off at 7, but I can make it there because the game was sort of delayed. It was a TV game. He's like, man, I appreciate it. I said, no problem. He said, can I tell you one more thing? I said, yeah. He said, them Pelicans suck. I said, okay, I can't do anything about the team, but, if you want to go to the game, I'll give you the tickets. And, it was just, I think about it because it was almost like a year ago now that event happened, and how today you got 2 courtside tickets, a couple courtside tickets for a game. You don't have to worry about getting rid of them, man. It's people are in line for it. So it's been a complete turnaround, and I think because of the talent and expectations are very high, you have a lot of confidence. Even though he's a young coach, Willie Green understands this game very well and understands the players around him and gets them motivated. And so it's a quick turnaround for something that you could never have guessed a year ago. It's almost like what you're talking about LSU football today.
Right. A year ago today, Mike, for perspective, everybody, the Pelicans lost to the Heat. They were 2-14. Jimmy Butler had a triple-double, and the Pelicans' leading scorer in the game was Nickeil Alexander-Walker. 1 year later, a heck of a lot changes. And you mentioned LSU. I do want to get in LSU with you, but let me circle back to Gail Benson's other team. You were making the house metaphor earlier, and it's kind of like building a house. Despite the fact that the NFC South is, one of the weaker divisions that we've seen in football in quite some time, the Saints, I don't know, man. A lot of fans just feel like tear the house down, get rid of it. Mike, rebuild, remodel, maybe just a new project manager. I mean, there's a lot of places you could go with this metaphor, but some Saints fans feel like the house is kind of on fire right now. Are things as bad on the inside as they seem on the outside right now, as far as the foundation of that house goes? Well,
you are what your record says you are. And don't give me this stuff about injuries. Everybody has them in the NFL. That's going to be a major remodeling job on this home in the off season. It's going to have to be. You don't have the right mix. And I really thought this off season that this would be a team that sort of had a transitional year. You can't lose an elite coach, and you better. That doesn't happen. And so I look at it defensively, that's been the biggest disappointment for me because basically your front seven, with one exception, and that's Quan Alexander, you returning everyone. And Pete Werner is having a good season until he hurt his ankle, and now he's going to be out a couple of weeks after some surgery. But what's happened there? Their bell cow the last 3 years has been stopping the run. They haven't done any of that. 3 years ago, they were giving up opponents 3.9 yards a rush. Last year, 3.7. This year, it's 4.6. Almost a yard more. And you say, oh, that's not that much, is it? It is if you're trying to stop the run, it is. And what's happened there to the core players of coming up with big plays and turnovers? The only massive change was that safety, where Malcolm Jenkins decided to retire. Marcus Williams got a great deal in Baltimore, and you decided to trade off Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Okay, is those three guys made that big of a difference? I think there's a little bit more to it than that. And I'm not trying to take anything away from those three guys because all three of them really played extremely well last year. And I think trading away C.D. Deuce, I think that may have sent a bad message to this team. Okay? He was sort of a spark plug guy, and he got under people's skin as an opponent. And he may have started to get under your skin because he wanted to get paid. I get it. Everybody wants to get paid. But to give him away and get peanuts in return, I think is what has angered everyone. Trading him was one thing. Getting really nothing back in return is the anger issue. That you didn't get anything, especially you got nothing this year. You got future draft picks. So, but defensively, where's the energy? Where's the big play? Where's the turnovers? It hasn't happened at all. And I think you could say that about the team, energy. And we hear it all the time. Where's the heart on this team? Where's the energy in this team? It's not there. Not there. And it really surprised me on defense because you had so many of the components back from what was a really good defense a year ago. They gave up the least amount of points in the NFC a year ago. That's totally changed now. You're getting gashed, not only via the air, but on the ground. And by teams that, when you look in the mirror, they look a lot like you. Steelers, I did some shows out in Pittsburgh, and people were saying, man, the Steelers not what they used to be. They're not a real good team, Mike. And I'm like, hey, guess what? The world champs ain't come rolling into town. And I could say the same thing this week. Okay, the people in L.A., well, the Rams aren't a good team. They aren't what they were a year ago. Well, guess what? You come to New Orleans, you ain't placing a top team either. They sort of all look a lot alike, especially in the NFC. I mean, there's a few teams that are different, but they all got a lot of the same issues. If you look at Carolina and Atlanta, and Detroit plays hard, but sometimes not real smart. The Bears, Justin Fields has come through the last couple of weeks, but defensively they absolutely lousy. The Packers look like a shell of themselves today. It's a lot of looking. Arizona, can't convince me that that's a top team. It is shocking how it is the haves and the have-nots, and very little in between. Either you playing real well or you not, and you look a lot like the Saints. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this has been a huge disappointment this year, and it sits on the shoulders of their defense because you were built to win on defense, special teams. We all knew offensive line play. I mean, I could tell in training camp they didn't have the 5 blocks of granite up front. The quarterback issue, we've done this the last couple of years. since Drew Brees retired, the next quarterback to lead you to really good seasons, he ain't on the roster. He's somewhere playing college football today. But how that was going to kind of wield out, we didn't really know. But we felt pretty strong. Defensively, special teams would be a strong point of this team, and yet that didn't happen either. What happened here? What unpeeled it so quickly? And, it's not going to get too much better. You may get a win or two more, a couple wins more, but this is a bad football team right now. There is Superman ain't coming in to save the day for you. Okay, you might want to believe that. Okay, and that's fine. Always hope. It's a small word, but it is there. But this team is who they are this year. You're not going to change that. They're mistake prone. They are turnover prone. Yeah, they do have injuries, but so do other teams in the NFL. Take a look at the Rams. They're playing with their third-string left tackle. This is the fourth center the Rams have. Their fourth one. You're not real sure. Stafford did get cleared, and he did practice fully yesterday, but you had your quarterback knocked around. You're down to John Wolford at quarterback. They also had, problems on the defensive front seven, keeping people healthy. Their secondary's been sort of beat up. Okay, you looking at the exact mirror of what you are here in New Orleans. It's strange. And the Steelers, in covering that game, it was the exact same thing. They had a bunch of injuries, and they're in issues of trying to rebuild. But the Rams aren't a good team, but neither are the Saints.
Yeah,
and that's not going to change. Even if you get a W, what does that matter? Look what you got down the road on this schedule. It ain't going to get any easier. It's not going to get any easier. So it's been a very disappointing season, but it does go to show you, without a star quarterback and an elite head coach, you got issues.
Elite head coach.
It's going to be tough to dig you out.
They had one in Sean Payton. I think of the fans complaining about him or Drew Brees' arm strength toward the quote end of his career, and I roll my eyes. I remember telling them all, like, you don't know, and not to say that it wasn't time for Drew to retire, but it
was time.
Correct. It was time, but those that were sort of wanting to push him out sooner or complaining about it all, I'm like, you don't know how good you have it. And last year I got accused of pointing out who the Saints were missing, and I'm like, look, there were some of those games, the Thanksgiving night game against the Bills, the Monday night game against the Dolphins, where because of injuries, because of COVID, they literally had, they were playing Hall of Fame game type rosters. Like, that's different than what the Saints are dealing with now. And the other thing I point out, Mike, is last year, despite all of that, all of the obstacles, all of the players they were missing, you never looked at the team and said, man, it feels like they don't even want to be here right now. Like, where's the effort? Where's the tackling? You didn't get that last year, even when, they were kind of knocked down. And that's why they were in the playoff hunt until the very last snap of the season. And I watched the team this year, and you mentioned defense. The head coach was the former defensive coordinator. That's his side of the ball. That's where he specializes. And we're only on the outside, and Dennis Allen is far from a, charismatic guy on the microphone. Is there potential here where he's gone after this year, Mike? How much will the next, I guess, month dictate what direction they move this offseason?
I think when you look at it, you always look at what people have done in the past. I don't, unless it would really get a lot worse, I think he gets another year. And he'll do what most head coaches are kind of forced to do. You got to make massive changes in your coaching staff. And so I think he does get another year, to be honest. I don't see Gail Benson and Dennis Lauscher and Mickey Loomis pulling the rug from him. I don't see that. So to answer the question, I think he does get another year, but he's going to be forced to make changes on his coaching staff. And then when you look at in the offseason, you already, and it's been worse, you're like $55 million over the cap now.
Yeah.
But it's more than that. It's something in the dynamics of a team that changes every year. And Bill Parcells used to say that every year, it's like a different jigsaw puzzle. You throw all the pieces down, and it's piecing it together. And every year is a little different now. Free agency has done that. It's going to happen in college football, too. Okay? You're going to start to see that applied to it because there are so many changes. It's sort of a commuter world of players and coaches like never before, and you see it in the NFL. It's piecing it together, and so you're going to have to make some tough decisions, and I think everything is on the table for the Saints. Players that you might not think they would look to deal off, don't be surprised that you see those type of deals. Just because I think maybe you feel it's not the right dynamic for this team today. Now, here's the tricky part, making the right decision on who to keep and who not to. Because I think they underestimated the emotional and talent level of C.D. Deuce. May not have kept him for a year. Okay, he might have been unhappy. He didn't get a new deal in Philly, did he? He's still playing. Who leads the NFL in interceptions?
That'd be C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
He's playing for his money.
Yep.
The same people that will tell you, well, if you gave him a lot of money, he might be a different player. It might be, but it never affected him before. He loved to play football, loved the game. And, well, they traded him away. He's not going to play hard unless he gets a new contract. All I know is he's playing his butt off in Philly. It's the same sort of narrative on Michael Thomas, and it's a little different situation. But people, he signed a new contract, didn't do anything. That's not true. He signed a new contract in the summer of 2019, had a great year in 2019. It's been the 1 year after when the injuries started to mount up and the discussion of should I have surgery and not have surgery. And you could tell in Sean's voice he was upset that he didn't go through the surgery. And some guys don't like to go through surgery. You know what? You got to do it. It was a wrong decision. And then what's happened this year, we saw him in training camp. He wasn't good. He was unbelievable. He beat everybody. It was almost like line him up and I'll beat him. And every day when he was practicing, he was beating them. And then all of a sudden gets hurt again. But do you want to go down that rabbit hole again? You got to ask yourself that. Okay, as good as he is, do you want to go down that rabbit hole with him again? Or do you try to do something to restructure and deal him off? You're not going to get a lot back because now you've got a player that's played very little in 2 years. And so, man, you're in a bit of a quandary here because financially it costs you. You can't just cut him loose. It's going to cost you. There is a price to pay when you put it on the credit card. And so I think there are going to be a lot of different options discussed this offseason. I do think Allen gets another year. I really think just because I don't see Gail Benson or Dennis Lauscher or Mickey saying, after 1 year he's gone. Now, are you putting off the inevitable? You might be, but I don't see them getting rid of him after this year. I don't. I know a lot of fans feel that way. Hey, we know what it is. You got to move on. But I don't see management doing that.
Interesting. It's hard to judge it from the past because, it's not like the Saints have had tons of head coaches in their history. And, Gail Benson is running things, or she's the owner anyway. It's not Tom anymore. And, we saw what they did on the other side of it with the Stan Van Gundy hire. But I tell people a lot, it's different, not just a different sport. Allen's been there a while. It's definitely a complicated situation and one that isn't really fun for anybody right now. We'll see what happens Sunday against the Rams, but bigger picture is kind of where the Saints are looking. And, you know, Mike, I know for you, with your draft guide and how much folks are into the draft, you know, that there's the belief, well, maybe Sean Payton will go somewhere, and then the Saints will get a first-round pick, and blah, blah, blah. That's all ifs. Right now, the Saints don't have a first-round pick, and in a year where you're struggling a lot, it's just pouring salt in an open wound is all it is.
Yeah, and look who's got your pick. Arguably the best team in the NFC. You know, they got your pick, and it's a top 5 pick today. And I think every day or every week when it passes, Sean Payton's stock goes up. You know, because all these teams and owners, most of them today made their money pretty quickly. Not all of them, but the majority of them sort of hit big one way or another. And they, you know, if you're a multi-billionaire, you lack one thing: patience. What? I mean, don't be telling me about rebuild, you know, because that's not part of their lexicon. That's not part of their world. They want success now. And that's why Peyton's probably going to be the first $20 million coach somewhere where he's going to make $20 million a year. That some team feels, hey, he's the final piece. And we all know Sean had a lot of say in personnel. If you want to believe otherwise, then I got a ski lodge behind my home here on the bayou to say it too. Sean had a tremendous amount of say on personnel. But, you know, there always comes a time that you know it's time to leave. And his mentor was always Parcells, who was a bit of a vagabond coach, okay? Giants, Jets, Cowboys, Patriots. He's a front office guy with the Dolphins. You know, he just sort of bounced around. He enjoyed those short stints, get your team to a certain level, then he wanted to move on. Sean wasn't like that. He stayed here a long time. In the NFL, Scott, I don't think we're going to live long enough to see a coach last as long as Peyton did here.
It's rare.
We're not going to see it.
It's rare.
That was a long stretch for him, where you had a head coach and a quarterback the same, other than 1 year. And then Sean saw the real world, too. That Drew Brees, when he was in his prime, he fixed a lot of the ills that were on your team. The disappointment that, you know, and I think even Sean would say it, even though he won't publicly say it, he just walked away with one championship. Because you had teams like in 2011, what happened in 2017 in Minnesota, to lose that playoff game in New Orleans against the Vikings, the no call, all this stuff. It's tough to get to the big game. It's tough. I think the Patriots, just because they did it so many times, and it almost seemed like it was easy, and you know it's not. And I think years after we all get out of this business, they're going to be writing books on Belichick and what he did in New England and what Nick Saban has done at Alabama. It's remarkable, that longevity to win and win at the highest level. That's not the norm in pro sports, and certainly not in the NFL.
Mike Detillier, our guest, 103.3 The GOAT simulcast on 1420. I'm Scott Prather. It's the Great Scott Show, 103.3 The GOAT, KPEL Lafayette. Mike, I want to talk some college football with you. I know we usually talk some Cajuns, too. I'll talk some Cajuns coming up in the next segment. They're heading to Florida State this Saturday. Florida State, who beat LSU to open the season by a point in a wild game, and the amount of, gosh, I get it. It's social media, right? After any game, win or lose, you're going to see exaggeration. That's just the nature of it. But man, some of the tweets after LSU lost to Florida State about Brian Kelly. They were something else, Mike. I mean, having said that, I'm not going to sit here and act like I thought in November 17th LSU would be a dark horse for a college football playoff spot, and I know a lot still has to happen for that to happen. But the fact that it's just a reality now is it's something. I mean, what obviously I look at Jaden Daniels and I remember the game at Florida, because coming off the Tennessee game, I'm like, I mean, is LSU going to go win in the Swamp based on how they played? And it really sort of clicked for him then, and it's been just a lot of good stuff. Harold Perkins, I mean, he's the best defensive player in college football. A lot of things. We talk about which way you're trending. LSU's trending upward right now. Did you foresee this back early in the season? I mean, obviously we thought they would improve, no. but not what they're doing right now, right?
No one would have thought this. Before the season, I picked them 8-4, and just understanding that the cupboard was thin, but what you inherited, especially on defense, was pretty good. And I had a SEC head coach tell me, man, when I took over, I didn't have no B.J. Ojolari or Ollie Gay or Jaqueline Roy, where he threw in Mason Smith. Mason went down in game one. Or Micah Baskerville or Greg Penn or Jay Ward or Major Burns. I didn't have any of those guys when I took over, but Brian was able to make it work with some of the leftover players from the prior regime, him using the transfer portal extremely well, and getting unbelievable play, and I've never seen this in my time, from 4 freshmen. Your 2 starting tackles, and your starting tight end in Mason Taylor, and then Harold Perkins. So a couple weeks ago, before the Alabama game, Wilson Alexander came on with us on Sports Talk, and he's like, Mike, you've seen a lot more LSU football than me. How good is Perkins? And I told him, you know what? Other than Honey Badger, I can't remember another freshman that made that big of an impact, tilt-the-field type impact. Derek Stingley was really good as a true freshman. I almost say it. He was really, really good. But Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu was unbelievable as a true freshman. And then I watched Perkins against Alabama, and then what he did last week, he sort of took over against Arkansas. So Wilson said, Mike, I'm going to use that quote. I said, okay, that's great. He does things you can't teach. He's got great instincts. His foot speed is off the charts. I mean, when he tracked down Hornsby, who was really fast, and he was part of the football 400-meter state championship relay team and a track sprinter in high school, and he not only did it once and twice, he did it 4 times, just tracked him down in the open field. It sort of reminds you a little bit of, and I wrote this about Derek Thomas, and that was my comp. People will say, well, he reminds me of Micah Parsons and stuff. He really reminds me a lot more of the late, great Derek Thomas. And Derek was like that. So I went back in my notes, and I saw what I wrote on my draft guide about Derek Thomas, and it was like he's a cheetah out in the jungle. And he's just waiting for game to pass him, and then he hunts you down. And that's what Perkins does. But you think about the dynamics of all of that working, and the Tennessee game, man, you got the tar kicked out of you that day. But it was a defining moment for Brian and understanding where this team had to be. And I think they bought into it after that game, that he's the right guy. And Ryan Harvat and I, we do a show for BetMGM, and he got hired on a Monday, so I had to do second guess. And then I got a quick snack, and then on my way back home, I did the show with Ryan. I couldn't believe, because I knew that Brian's a really good coach, well organized, smart, a good recruiter, has a good support staff and assistant coaching staff around him. How much negativity was thrown at Kelly the day he got hard? I'm not even talking about the Florida State game. The day he got hard, he's not going to fit. And my thing is, wait a minute, where the hell did Nick Saban grow up? Or where did Les Miles grow up?
Dale Brown.
Dale, come on, that has nothing to do with it. Zilch. But you had a lot of people who believed that. And at the Florida State game, that was the thing they were able to throw the trump card down. That, hey, I told you that he's not a good fit here. I told you. Remember when I called and told you? Okay. But I don't hear from him anymore. Those days are gone. And you see how well he's been able to piece together recruiting. And, man, he's got it rolling now. Now, okay, he's different personality-wise. He's different than Les, and Coach O was different than Les, and I didn't grow up with him like I did when it was wrong. So our relationship is different in how he'll tell me some things, and sometimes he's close to the vest with it. And I get it. You don't have to tell me everything, but I can see it. They bought into it. But it was the development of the offensive line, which was a major question mark going into the season. And you couldn't tell by what happened last Saturday, but Jaden Daniels changed the world for him. I've never seen a quarterback that can run like what Jaden can at LSU. Never. There's not been a guy like him. Listen, a lot of people throw out other names, but, man, Daniels' speed is really impressive. You think you got an angle on him, and yet he run right past you. And he's gotten better as a passer. He's still not there yet. I think a lot of it has to do with him maybe locating his secondary receivers and also trusting the talent at receiver, that not everything got to be high school open. Just throw it up there. That guy's going to go out and catch it. And so we've seen the improvement with Jaden, and he's taken over as a leader too. That's the other part about it. When he came in here, there was a lot of debate what was going to exactly happen. Because I do know one thing: Brian Kelly sent Miles Brennan to the Manning Passing Academy. Because I know how that works. Archie will call the head coach and say, who's your starting quarterback? Who you project? Because I don't want any quarterback controversy stuff here. Brian Kelly sent Miles. He didn't send Jaden Daniels. Now, Jaden came Saturday of the Manning camp, but he wasn't the guy that Coach Kelly sent. He sent Brennan. And in that situation, and so, man, it's a magical run. I had somebody tell me this and sort of remind me the other day, and I'll always say this: I love the unknown of life. Now, some people don't. Some people don't like it at all. I want to know ahead of time. I'm scared of the unknown. I love that part of life. I lived another life before I did sports, so to speak. So I get it, but you got to understand that that's the story. That's really the story this year, has been the transformation of LSU from going to around 40 players on your roster to seeing what Kelly has been able to build in so quickly. And you go through game one and you lose a top player like Mason Smith for the season, and you didn't play well and you were miscombobulated, and now you're going to go to the SEC championship game. Ain't nobody could have predicted that. No one.
No.
You might have predicted 8 games, and I did, or maybe even 9 games. But no one, and including myself, would have predicted where they're at today. And I think even Brian probably wouldn't have. To be honest, I think if you put him on the lie detector machine, he'd blow that circuit. If he said, "Yeah, I thought we'd be in the SEC championship game in Atlanta." Come on, it was been an unbelievable ride for Kelly and this football team, and to think that 4 freshmen, all these grad transfers, and about 40 guys left over from the prior regime. That's what you're winning with. But then I talked to Lincoln Riley, and he was like, okay, Kelly's winning with that. I have 53 new players at USC. And look where USC's at.
Yeah.
53.
Yeah.
Now, he got the third quarterback now. That did sort of change the world for him, landing Caleb. But, man, I think, Scott, we in the new world of college football where you're going to see this happen not just in 2022. You're going to see it happen every year. That some team, a coach comes in, there's some talent, he uses the transfer portal, he gets really good play out of a handful of freshmen, and they right up there. They're in the ring, fighting for it. Everybody thought name, image, likeness, transfer portal would kill college football. Today, there's more interest in college football than ever before. You
look at Mike Detillier, our guest, great stuff. 103.3 The GOAT simulcast on 1420, great scat show. Last thing for you, Mike, looking at it, part of the interest is the college football playoff. And all of the debate and the discussion, and it changes weekly, and I get all that. And that was true back when it was the BCS, and it'll still be true even when they expand the college football playoff to include more teams. And yes, some games will lose in the regular season. A few games will lose the overall feel of, man, this kind of feels like a mini playoff game in a way, but I think it'll bring that feeling to some other games, right? More games, more teams involved. Heck, group of 5 teams. But with all of that, let me ask you this, and then we'll let you run, and we always appreciate the time. At Mike Detillier on Twitter, everybody, go follow him if you're not already. You know where to find his stuff. You've been following him for years. I don't see a scenario where if Tennessee wins out, LSU would get in over Tennessee. Now, there's some that say, hey, you win the SEC. I'm like, look, you'd have one more loss and they beat you, you're placed by a lot. That's just the only potential scenario if Tennessee wins out where LSU would get in is if the SEC were to get 3 teams in. And for the record, as good as LSU has been and as much as they've surprised us all, as you said, I still wouldn't predict them to beat Georgia, but that's just me. Do you see a scenario where if it's not 3 SEC teams getting into the college football playoff, where LSU could actually get in, assuming Tennessee doesn't lose? And when you look at their schedule, I'm not expecting them to lose another game.
It would be very difficult to keep LSU out if you won out and winning and beating Georgia in the SEC championship. It would be difficult. And Tennessee's had a great run, and they do have that big victory against you. But, man, it would be really difficult for the committee to say the SEC champion does not get into the Final Four. Yeah. Really difficult for that to happen. And then it would probably be Georgia and LSU. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the other thing, because now the mix is who else is going to go in? Okay, Ohio State. Could you see an Ohio State, Michigan? Let's say Ohio State beats Michigan. Let's say it's 23-21. And using the scenario you bring up that LSU would beat Georgia, and I don't think that. I think Georgia's. They are who they are. I think they're the top team in college football today. That those would be the 4. And what happens to TCU? Okay, and you could say, yeah, TCU ain't that good. Okay, all I know is if you roll with an undefeated record, that's going to be difficult to keep them out.
If they're undefeated, they're in. If they're undefeated,
yeah. But again, that's a big if. And sure. A lot of people last week, Bobby and I, we disagreed on this because you said, Mike, I think this is the week. I think Texas beats them. And I said, man, listen, the one thing I've watched with TCU is, and I didn't think their defense would play that good against Texas, but, man, they can score points. And they're entertaining, and they can smoke you. They hit you with the tsunami offensively. What's surprising is how well they played defensively against Texas. Then what happens if you got a one-loss USC team? Because that's where the other pressure point's going to be. And I don't think USC they certainly don't have much talent on defense. That's a major rebuild for Lincoln, and he knows it. But, boy, you got a star quarterback, and you can put up points. I think all of that sort of works itself out, to be honest with you. I think it all works itself out. But you're going to have two SEC teams in the Final Four. I have no doubt about it. Having three would really be stretching it, and that may mean that if LSU would beat Georgia's still in it. The committee would have a difficult time saying, no, we're going to pick the team that didn't play in the SEC championship instead of the champ. You couldn't do it. Couldn't look yourself good in the mirror and make that decision. And Tennessee may be regulated to have to play, in another bowl game, but it's going to be outside the Final Four. And it's been a magical run for Tennessee, too. It's been a great run. And it's, I think, the blueprint of what I think Brian would like for to happen at LSU. And that's for Hendon Hooker to come back and play another year after he sort of thought about, because he told me at the Manning camp, I thought about it seriously, coming out early, because he had really pieced together a really good season. And he said, you know what, I decided I'm going to come back and play another year. Can Brian convince Jaden to do that? That's the biggest recruit of this offseason.
No doubt.
Biggest recruit, getting Jaden Daniels to come back and play another season. And, man, they got a couple freshmen. A couple of their coaches have told me, and Brian's hinted toward it also. Another guy to watch is DeMario Tolan, who highly recruited player from the Florida area. He was an early commit to Orgeron's staff. He hurt his back, had back surgery this summer, so he was a little slow from coming back from the injury. But when you talk to the defensive coaches there, and even Brian brought this up a couple of weeks ago, that, man, that guy's really good. Really, really good. Now, you see him play a lot on special teams, and now they've moved him. He's the backup to Micah Baskerville. But Kelly sort of indicated it's going to be difficult to keep him off the field. That you could have Greg Penn, Perkins, and Tolan at the linebacker position, and you get Mason Smith back. Because you're going to lose B.J. and Ali Gay to the NFL. You're going to lose those guys. But, they got it stacked. But the biggest recruit is going to be Daniels. And to convince him he's better off coming back and play another year and let his draft stock rise like what we've seen with Hendon Hooker, who's played really, other than the Georgia game, he has really played off the charts. But not too many people have played well against Georgia this year. And that's as big a surprise to me as anything, too. Okay, how can you lose 15 guys to the NFL, have 4 guys sign free agent contracts because they had 15 drafted players, 4 guys sign undrafted contracts, 13 players in the transfer portal left Georgia. Look where they're at today. But there was one major guy there that decided to come back, Stetson Bennett. And so, man, not having the quarterback makes all the difference in the world. Makes all the difference. But goes to show you how stacked that they are on defense when you lose as much as they did and to kind of reload the rifle. And, man, Bobby has a comment he always tells me about bend but don't break. And I said that might apply to most teams, but it don't apply to Georgia. There's bend but don't break. They break you, and then they bend you over, and they spank your backside. Man, because they come at you differently than other teams. They are aggressive. They take a lot of chances. They show you looks and then pull out of that same look and then show you to look again, and then they do something different. It's what Kirby does extremely well defensively. But how well they played on offense has been impressive. And Bennett's a better player today than he was a year ago.
Absolutely. I mean, it was all about what he can't do, and I think folks are finally starting to come around thinking, man, Mike, he was committed to go play for Billy Napier at UL, and then Georgia at the last minute was like, hey, you can gray shirt. I don't remember all the details, and that was the school he grew up rooting for. So, and he's doing pretty well with some NIL deals he's got over there in the state of Georgia.
They built. Name me the receivers at Georgia.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't do it right off the top of my head.
But look what they got at tight end.
Oh,
and they got 3 of them.
They have 3 All-American. I know they're not all going to be All-American, but they have 3 All-American tight ends.
And so it's not like you lighting everybody up, throwing the football all over the field, and it's what you see at USC and some of the other places. No, they do it sort of old school. They run the football well. They beat you up in the trenches. And, boy, are they aggressive. And it's defense 101 when you watch Kirby. He throws you a lot of different looks. They have a lot of different stunts. They move their linemen a little bit right before the snap. It's a lot of different things for an opposing quarterback to process of exactly where they're coming from. And then all of a sudden he sends a cornerback blitz or a safety blitz or a delayed linebacker blitz. It's not all about beating you up front, and they win there. But, man, it's where that pressure's coming from. Where's that fourth guy coming from? And he disguises it so well. And yet, look, the mass exodus out of there to the NFL. And when you win like what they do, there's going to be a lot of transfer. Man, I ain't playing here. I got to go somewhere else. They had 13 guys leave, transfer portal people. So with 15-4, it says 19, and 13 guys transfer portal. They looked at chunk off of that team that was missing from a year ago, and they right back in the hunt for the national championship. Georgia's the new Alabama today. Bottom line, they're the new Alabama.
They've got the horses, and outside of just kind of falling asleep at the wheel against Missouri, they've lived up to it all season, with the exception of one Saturday, and they still got the win, of course. Mike Detillier, it's always a win when we bring him on. At Mike Detillier on Twitter, you know where to hear Mike. Sports Talk on WWL, all over the place. MikeDetillier.com to learn more, and he's just doing radio hits all the time. Has for years. He comes on this show a couple times a year. He comes on this station multiple times a year. We always appreciate him, Mike. You know me, man. I could talk football with you all day, every day, but you've been very generous with your time. We appreciate it. And shoot, man, we'll talk to you again in the near future. But
yeah, give me a call, buddy. Nope, always my pleasure to do it, Scott. Thank you.
You got it. That is Mike Detillier. All the best, Mike.